Welcome to FinTech Sandbox Day number 3. We're so excited to have people here. It's nice to see a hot room on a semi-hot day and a really packed room. So it's going to be a great day. For those of you I don't know, my name is David Jegen. I'm one of the co-founders of FinTech Sandbox and also a partner with F Prime Capital, which is the venture capital arm affiliated with Fidelity Investments. I have the privilege of just kicking off the day, letting you know what's going to happen in terms of sequence, as well as sharing a few words about FinTech Sandbox. Many of you may know about FinTech Sandbox, but for those who may be newer here or came specifically to hear the startups present, FinTech Sandbox is a nonprofit formed about 2 years ago to aggregate financial data and make it available for FinTech entrepreneurs and startups to build applications and services. It was based upon a problem that many of us saw in the community of like the just difficulty of accessing data, either because it was proprietary, difficult to get, or very expensive to get, and knowing how that impeded some startups from actually building new applications and services. So we created the Sandbox to help address that need. And we've had about 50 startups go through the Sandbox to date. We've had a lot of data partners join and provide a wide range of data. We have 22 data partners from Thomson Reuters, NASDAQ, CME. And at this point, I'd say we have an exceptional database of capital markets-oriented trading data to help most startups in that area. And so today, we're open for applications from seed stage startups, startups that have raised some money, have built some product, have wrestled with the problem of working with financial data and understand that pain, and when they enter the Sandbox and have access for a limited 6-month period of time, are able to build something of substance, some milestone that you will often see as an example here today or some other milestone. And we are also, although it's a virtual sandbox, if you will, since data by itself is virtual, we do have 5 cities in which we're targeting and 5 cities in which we accept startups, and that's Boston, New York, San Francisco, London, and we just launched in Chicago earlier this year. So today's got a nice representation. In fact, if anything, I would say the startups that you'll see today, and for those of you who may have come to the past demo days, it's like a really nice diversity. It's like not just capital markets, frankly. We have some banking-related companies. We have lending-related companies. And for those of you who like compliance, and I know you are out there, just like me, you're going to even get a compliance-related startup. So it's a really great group. And they actually come from 4 of the cities, not Chicago today. We do have some startups from Chicago in the Sandbox, but 4 of the cities represented here as well. So in terms of what we're doing and the kind of the sequence of the day, I'm going to introduce Fawce, also known as John Fawcett, the CEO and co-founder of Quantopian, a really interesting company that he'll tell you more about, but was one of the first startups to go through the Sandbox and talk about his journey. We will then have 8 startups present, 4 followed by a break for everyone to talk a little bit more, followed by 4 more. And then we'll have a great reception, food, drink outside. And for those who are still not finished, we're going to have an after party. Hopefully people who wanted to join, heard about that, signed up. We'll have an after party at the yard down the street. So we have a whole night. I mean, it's going to go all night long. Sounded like something Donald Trump would say, all night long. So anyway, we're so excited to get started. So I would like to introduce Fawce. And one second, I got to tell them all about you. Fawce founded Quantopian, which for many of you, if you're in the FinTech community, you probably know about Quantopian. It's really one of the most intriguing companies today in FinTech. And in effect, they provide kind of anyone in this audience or anyone around the world might want to develop a trading strategy, develop an algorithm. They provide the infrastructure to do so, the data, and even the capital to help you test and then ultimately deploy and execute those trading strategies. So it's really changed the way you might think about who is a quant, who can develop a trading strategy. And I met Fawce a few years ago when he had just started Quantopian, and I had just started investing full-time with F Prime Capital, and it's been magical really watching his progress. And he was instrumental in, along with some other entrepreneurs like Sarah Biller, who's here, and Ty Danko, who really crystallized, I think, the idea behind FinTech Sandbox and the problem set that existed that we could try to solve, and was also very helpful in just working out the kinks and setting up the Sandbox and the infrastructure that we now have today. So with a lot of gratitude and a lot of respect for what he's done, I'm excited to introduce Fawce. Please welcome John Fawcett.
How are we doing? Oh my gosh, there's a lot of you. So first of all, I just want to say congratulations to Gene and David and everybody at the Sandbox. This is awesome. You must be so proud. So congratulations and great job. I'm so happy to be here. So, I guess today is just the latest thing I want to thank you for, because the Sandbox has been super helpful for Quantopian and really for the entire FinTech ecosystem over the years. I think originally I was supposed to tell the story of Quantopian. I was thinking about it. My son's birthday is today. He turns 7. So little Rocco is now a 7-year-old. And I was thinking about it, and he was 2 when I started the company. That, when you have kids, it's like a milepost, really like marks out the time for you. It's a little bit devastating that he is 7 at this point. So I think the entire story might be just a little bit too long. And so I was going to stick to why. Why did I do this? Why did I start Quantopian? And I think there are really 2 big reasons, and they're actually both pretty personal. So I'll just kind of tell you a story. So I grew up in Lowell, Massachusetts, Mill City on the Merrimack. My dad taught shop at the high school. My mom was a nurse. And, we had a nice life, just sort of bumping along, barely, some months we were in the middle class, some months we weren't in the middle class. It was a good life, but, I figured I'd be like, a tradesman or something like that. And I found out about this high school that was very close by that I noticed it because it had this big bell tower, which I thought was the coolest thing ever. I thought the high school was in the bell tower. So it was this school called Phillips Academy Andover. And so I started asking my parents about it. I really want to go there. And, they explained it was this private school you got to pay for. It's super expensive. You probably can't go. So for years I wanted to do this, and I ended up applying and being accepted and getting a scholarship. And I found out that in addition to having the bell tower, the school has an endowment. And because of that endowment, they're obviously generous donors that had given, but they're also managers who manage the endowment year to year. And they ensured that there was money there when I needed it to go to school. And that school really changed my entire life, changed the whole trajectory of where I was going. Not that I think I was like going to end up in trouble or anything, but it was really just a transformation for me. Including I met my wife there, so that was good. As I learned about how that all worked, I just was amazed that there was this tool that people have for planning for the future, and to assure that people like me, when they again needed help, could get it, and that this great institution was able to propel itself into the future through financial planning. And so to me, that was really the core thing. It's what I decided I wanted to do with my career, with some major twists and turns along the way. And so I went to college, graduated, and ended up working as a professional software engineer. Timed it perfectly, just in time for the dot-com crash. So I stopped being a software engineer when there stopped being software engineering jobs, and I ended up working at a hedge fund. And I was really excited because it was professional investing. I was going to be doing what I thought endowments did. And I ended up at this particular hedge fund because the portfolio manager there I met, and he told me, don't worry about picking stocks. That's not what this job is about. It's about understanding technology and thinking about trends. You explain the trends, I pick the stocks. It's going to be great. That sounded awesome. I was an engineer, so it seemed like a fit, felt like something I could do. So I show up, and I walk into the trading room. There's like 8 people yelling at each other. There are 3 televisions with 4 channels flying on them. Just the worst possible environment for concentration of any kind. And I sit down next to the portfolio manager, and he looks at me and says, "What are your favorite shorts?" I was like, I don't know. I have some cargo shorts I like a lot, and some cut-off denim. So I just had no idea what was involved with investing. And I pretty much felt that out of place from that day for the next couple of years, because it was a long short equity hedge fund, we're stock picking shop. And for an engineer like me, it was just not a great match. So I ended up leaving and starting a software company that sold to hedge funds called Tamale. And it made a research management system, which was a system for organizing the internal research. So it's kind of like Evernote, but just for finance. And we ran that company independently for about 9 years, and sold it to Advent in 2008. And at that point, we went from having sort of one kind of customer, which is like the long-short equity hedge fund, stock pickers, to having all kinds of customers. Advent was a global company, started selling our product all over the world, which was thrilling. And I got to meet all sorts of investors, including quants. And when I met quants, all of a sudden I thought, oh, this is awesome. This is everything that I like about finance and the markets and software. And it's a field where I think I could participate. So I wanted to just learn more about it. And what I learned about it is, interestingly, in this field that is completely automated, right? Quantitative investing is about being systematic, using data to make decisions about which stocks to invest in and which stocks to sell short. And yet the key missing and sort of short ingredient is people. So there's not enough people that have the skills to analyze the data, to come up with signals, to make the investments. And within firms, there's a lot of pressure to build the research organization for quantitative finance. And so I had this idea that I would build a giant research team. And I started thinking about how I would do that. And I realized that what was missing was a platform. And I wanted to build a platform for conducting research, for testing strategies, for building them, and for ultimately deploying them. So I started trying to meet quants and talk to them about this. And I learned that first thing they often do is build a back tester. So I started fooling around building a back tester. And I got so excited about this idea of building a platform and then giving it away that I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And eventually my wife said, you know what, why don't you just quit your job and work on this so that you stop talking about it so much. So I did. And sort of the first thing you do to start a company is you need to figure out what you're going to be building, and then you got to think about the financial picture for the company. So I started building the model for expenses. What am I going to be spending? And I knew I needed to buy data. So I went through the model and put it all together, and I'd sort of saved up enough money from Tamale days to be able to self-fund for a couple of months. I really wanted to get as far as I could. And I remember working out the finances, and I had this line item for data. And the data line item was quite large. It was more than what I was planning on living on, and it was much more than I was planning on spending on anything else. And I knew I just had to have it. There's no way to build a backtester if you don't have the data. And so I was like, well, what am I going to cut? And the only thing I could think to cut was office space. I won't get an office. So instead of an office, I cleared out the shed in my backyard, and I started the company in June. I got like an extension cord out there, had my laptop and everything like that, and I went to work. So I built the backtester in the shed with the data, and that went pretty well. I got it online. I got a bunch of initial users. It took a few months, and around November, this is in Massachusetts, so in November it started to get pretty chilly outside, especially toward the end. And I thought, well, I better go raise money because I really need the office now. It's going to be freezing in a month or two. So went out and raised the money for the company. But I'll just never forget making the choice between buying the data and getting office space. It was just like such a stark contrast. And other people I knew that were starting companies that were in different segments and not financial in nature just didn't have to contend with that problem. And so when David told me about this idea that he would create this nonprofit that would just streamline the process for getting data to startups, I had a very visceral reaction. I mean, it just sounded like exactly what the industry needed. And I really think that's been borne out. And I think the giant crowd here tonight and all the wonderful companies that have come through the Sandbox are proof that this was really, really needed. So Quantopian, we've evolved over the years and grown. We now have 90,000 users worldwide. They're represent about 180 countries. They've written hundreds of thousands of investment algorithms. We're pretty sure, it's not like there's a lot of public data about this, but we think we have the largest research sort of effort in the world, or probably in history, and we have the largest database of individual investment strategies, automated investment strategies that's ever been created. And we've built a process internally for culling through all of those and finding the best ones to then deploy and invest with. And when I think about the future, it's really all about data for Quantopian. So we have a platform that provides all the functionality necessary. We have a huge global community filled with really interesting, fascinating people from many different backgrounds, many different types of training, all applying their skills to finding signal and data in order to invest. And really what we need to do just continuously over the next 5 years is add more data. So we're constantly on the hunt for new data sets, new providers, new sources, to integrate into the platform and diversify our signals, because our ultimate goal is to have a very large portfolio of algorithms that are very low correlation to one another. And in today's world, the best way to achieve low correlation is to have many, many different data sources available for those algos. We're also hiring. I thought I would plug that while I was here. We actually are rolling out a new program where people are going to get introduced to many different roles within the company. It's sort of an entry-level program, which I think is really cool. So I'd love to tell you about that afterwards. And I wanted to end with a quick, funny kid story. I like to start meetings at work with funny kid stories. I have 3 boys, so I have a lot of kid stories. Most of them end in violence, but this one does not. So actually, I have 3 kids, and then my house and my sister-in-law's house are back-to-back. So we live in 2 different streets. We have 1 big backyard, and they have 3 kids. So on average, there were 5 kids in both houses at all times. And they're overlapping in ages, and our middle son, actually the guy who's turning 7 today, is the exact same age as his cousin. So it's Rocco and Reese. And we call them the married couple. They kind of travel around together, do everything together. They bicker. They're very funny. So, we have this one big backyard. They're in the backyard. And Rocco says to Reese, hey, you want to go in the front yard? And Reese says, that sounds great. Let's go to the front yard. And they start walking in opposite directions. And they came back and they started arguing with each other about where the front yard is. So they agree on the backyard, but they have no idea where the front yard is. So, they fought for like 10 minutes and then kind of got them squared away. They went on their way. But I think of this today because FinTech is a bit of an odd couple, and it is a game of switching perspectives and trying to understand, what it's like for the very, very large incumbent businesses that exist in our space, and then zooming down to the brand new companies that are trying to change everything that might be 1 or 2 people. And so I think in addition to sort of streamlining the path for startups to get to critical data to get going, the FinTech Sandbox has really served to bring together these two different communities and 2 different constituencies within financial technology and create a community of it, which is no small feat and I think incredibly valuable for the industry. So I'm just very grateful to have been a part of it, and thank you to the FinTech Sandbox.
Thank you, Fawce, for those remarks. You've had a big impact at the Sandbox as well, and really appreciate your involvement and your guidance as we've looked to grow this. Early on, one of the things we were talking about, I remember talking with Fawce about how should we look to move forward? What should be our value add? We talk about the data, and he's like, the biggest thing you could do for startups is create more collisions. So I want to give credit to where credit's due, as Fawce actually came up with the term collisions, which I have now used continually to describe the Sandbox. But it's really about, for the startups, creating as many collisions with data partners, with financial institutions, with investors, with other people in the startup community, and that's really what we're trying to achieve here today. So thank you. I also want to thank our sponsors, our board members, our data partners, accelerator partners, and advocates who are here today. It's because of this community that we're starting to see the new technologies come forward in financial services with better solutions for our consumers and businesses. I also want to thank our event sponsors tonight, Mass Mutual Ventures, S&P Global Market Intelligence, X-Ignite, Deloitte, Dun & Bradstreet, and our host, Hatch Fenway, for this amazing space. You guys made this event possible here today, so I want to thank you guys, and if we could have a round of applause. All right. So this is our 3rd demo day. 3rd demo day since March of 2015, so we're pretty excited about that. And since that point, we're now up to 57 startups that we've been able to help access data, as David said, in the cities we talked about. And we've seen a lot of them move their businesses forward. We've seen a couple get acquired from an M&A perspective, which is great. We've seen a couple who have pivoted and changed product offerings. And then we've also seen a couple who have decided to do other things. But the majority are still in the trenches. They're still trying to move their product forward. They're trying to obtain customers. They're trying to raise money. They're trying to adapt and develop their products. So we're really glad to have you here today to kind of see what they've done and what they've developed and help them move forward. We're really hoping that after today we can talk to these startups and see additional proof of concept opportunities and collisions that you guys can have with these startups. So we're really looking forward to that. So how does this work? All right, who's been here before? Who's been to one of the other startups? Oh, that's awesome. All right, for you newbies, each company has 5 minutes to present their product. So you're going to hear the problem, the solution, and how it works, and then we're going to dive into the demo. The demo is pre-recorded. My risk management team suggested that as a path forward. So during that time, you're only going to see a sliver of what they have to offer. So we really ask you to come over to the showcase and talk to them and to dive deep into the live demos that everyone will have at their tables. And yeah, all right, any questions on how it operates? All right, because I want to dive in. So the Sandbox community is also just awesome. So I feel very fortunate to have great partners who I can bring up to the stage. So I'd first like to introduce Matt Ryan from Thomson Reuters, who I work with on a regular basis to introduce our first startup.